Hi guys, and welcome to Literary Gladiators. I'm Kayla, and tonight we will be going over feminism and classic fairy tales. What I've chosen tonight are all Brothers Grimm fairy tales. Most of them come from this book. This can be found at Barnes & Noble, but they can also all be found online pretty easily without looking too hard. The ones we're going over tonight are Cinderella, Snow White, Little Red Riding Hood, and Rapunzel. First, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of definition, so to speak, about feminism and sexism in general, and how sexism pertains to the Brothers Grimm fairy tales. Basically, feminism, which I'm sure you all know, is the ideology that women and all genders deserve to be treated equally. And sexism in literature is the inequality between males and females in literature, and especially how they're treated as main characters. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into that with Cinderella. Basically what I got out of Cinderella was this whole ideology of true love, and does Cinderella really love the prince? So if you guys have read the fairy tale, you know that instead of the Disney version, the feast was held for like 3 nights, and each night Cinderella spent the whole night dancing with the prince, and then he tried to essentially take her home with him, and she was like, not having it, no thanks, I'm gonna go ahead and leave now. And the prince didn't really like that, and chased her up a tree and tracked down her dad, and it was not my idea of a very good date, to be honest with you. But that made me wonder, like, and in the end she ends up marrying him anyway, which just made me wonder, like, does she really love the prince, or was she just really desperate to get out of her house? I don't really think Cinderella had very much of a personality in this. She was kind of a one-dimensional character. She didn't change at all. There was no character arc. I mean, granted, it's really, really tough to get a character arc in a story that's literally 3 to 4 pages long. But she didn't make any of her own decisions, really. All of her choices were made for her, which is, it speaks a lot about how women were seen in this time, I think. But she doesn't do anything herself, really. She's really dependent on all of the other characters in the story, particularly the birds that help her along. They literally are the only reason she ends up with the prince, or going to the ball, or having a dress, or anything like that. They clean up the lentils that her stepmother throws into the fire for her. They tell the prince when he's got the wrong girl at the end of it, which is just really bizarre to me, because how can he not recognize her? Like, that's always baffled me about Cinderella, though. And I just want to real briefly touch on how this differs from the Disney movie, because in the ending of the fairy tale, both of the stepsisters end up cutting off parts of their feet to be with this guy. I don't know, man. I don't know. That just seems really bizarre to me. But that clearly doesn't happen in the Disney version. So all in all, I'd say that Cinderella is really sexist and not at all a very good feminist tale, because it basically promotes women just dating the first guy that comes along and never looking for anything better, or never like making your own decisions and just doing what you're told. And then up next is Snow White, which was just a really, really bizarre tale in general. But this one made me think a lot about the standards of beauty in society and the price that women are told they should pay for that beauty. The main example of this being the wicked stepmother, because here is this villain who could be really, really cool. She, can make really weird, specific potions that only affect you if you're eating the apple or have the comb lodged in your hair. I don't know. And, she has the makeup skills of, like, a YouTube star, and she could just be really, really cool, and all she cares about is killing her stepdaughter, who's slightly prettier than her. Why? Why? So I think it's a really good, like, tale about how we see beauty and what beauty means to women. But basically Snow White is just ridiculous because she is a complete moron. She lets this woman who's disguised as a beggar into her house not once, not twice, but 3 times, and is poisoned all 3 times, presumed dead. And it's not until the dwarves come home and like find her dead on the floor after several hours, and they just revive her. It's beyond me, man. I don't understand that kind of magic at all. Not even Harry Potter would understand that kind of magic. But and another princess who marries the first guy she ever sees, essentially, because she's dead in a coffin for months in the middle of the woods when the prince comes along and is like, hey, can I buy that body off of you guys? And the dwarves are just like, sure, why the hell not? And they sell him the body. They go traipsing off into the woods. The piece of poison apple gets dislodged from the princess's throat, and she just wakes up after being dead for months and months and months. And then they fall in love, and they get married. And the best part about this is that they invite the evil queen to the wedding and make her dance in shoes made of iron that have been sitting in a fire for a really long time. And she literally dances herself to death. Which, I mean, maybe we should consider bringing that back, because that sounds pretty solid to me. But again, an incredibly, incredibly sexist fairy tale. One I would not read to my little girls when I have kids. The next one is Little Red Riding Hood, which was, it had less for you to focus on if you didn't want to look into this too deeply. I mean, I could probably go on for an hour about it, how it's a cautionary tale for women to stay away from older men. And hey, I am not saying that 12-year-olds should be dating 45-year-olds, but I'm saying Little Red Riding Hood is an idiot because she can't tell when a wolf is dressed up as her grandmother. Really? You couldn't tell that the wolf was dressed up as your grandmother? Little Red Riding Hood, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. But, and she's fooled not once, but twice again. I don't know what's with these fairy tale princesses and not being able to tell when people really aren't who they say they are. It's not that difficult. It's not like they had good makeup back in medieval Brothers Grimm days. Like, it's just, I don't understand what these people were doing. So it's definitely not the worst of the Brothers Grimm tales, but it is definitely still not very feminist. And then last, we have Rapunzel. So out of all of these, Rapunzel was probably the most feminist, but it's still really sexist. But there are also, it's probably the most symbolic out of them as well. So again, we have another princess, first of all, who will marry the first man she ever sees in her entire life. But that's completely beside the point, I guess. But basically, obviously, you guys know Rapunzel. She has this ridiculously long hair that, Mother Gothel climbs up, and, the prince sees it, and blah, 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 blah. But basically, what I found really interesting was the fact that even today, and going back, biblically speaking, whatever, hair is a really good symbol of power. So in that way, this is kind of an improvement from our previous ones, because Rapunzel is already seen as like this power source, essentially. She's a symbol of power because she has this really strong, long hair. And then, of course, Mother Gothel cuts it off. But, at least she had that, which none of our other princesses have had so far. And Rapunzel isn't a very intelligent princess either. She's dating this man. He's a random man. He's coming up into her tower every night for months. They're married. but I don't remember a ceremony happening or anything like that. And she accidentally mentions him to her mother, and that's how she loses all of her power and her status and her husband. But some more symbols in this are the loss of the prince's eyesight. He still loves her even though he can't see her, which is A plus, Brothers Grimm. You did okay on this one. She goes out. Rapunzel is exiled to the desert by Gothel, and is wandering around the desert and gives birth to twins, which are conflicting symbols, which is really interesting because clearly she's fertile if she's having twins. But this desert is a symbol of infertility and barrenness, which I think is kind of interesting. If you guys have any ideas on that, let me know, because I'm not 100% sure how to interpret those conflicting symbols. But this is definitely the most interesting of these 4 fairy tales. This is probably the most feminist. It's still by no means feminist, but I would potentially read my daughter this fairy tale. If you guys have anything to say, we'll start a discussion. I could talk about this for hours. And let me know if you have any ideas or anything else you want to see. Alright? Bye.